Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. Welcome to another session of Canvas Live. Canvas Live sessions are presented by Canvas community members or Instructure employees to help Canvas users improve and enhance their teaching and learning with Canvas. Today's session, we continue with our Google LTI series, and we're going to talk about driving course content. My name is B. Rye. I'm a community manager here at Instructure, and with me we have Nick Demas, who's also a trainer here at Instructure. The Google LTI is in beta, so everything we talk about today is just in hopes to help keep the conversation going about how people are using and leveraging this LTI in their courses and in their Canvas instances. Just to sort of frame our conversation, if this is your first session, Google LTI basically allows users to leverage more Google tools and functionalities within Canvas. It's not that Google and Canvas don't work together, but the LTI makes it a little more seamless, less toggling between Google and Canvas, and automatically sets up some permissions in the back end without having to do them manually. An overview of how to install the Google LTI. You can add it via EduApps. Then you have to configure the LTI in your course, and then you have to authorize that Canvas can access Google. And so once we do those 3 steps, you'll be able to do everything we talk about today. So I'll just go through real quick on those steps in more detail. So in your Canvas course, if you are the designer or the teacher in your course, you can go into course settings, click on the Apps tab, and add an app. And so in order to add this app, it'll give you the name of the app. You'll need a consumer key and a shared secret. So in order to get those pieces, you'll have to go to a website, eduappcenter.com, and do a search for Google Apps and click the button to generate an LTI key and secret. Then you can take those pieces and go back to your course and plug that information back into those sections. And then when you launch anything in Google within your course, you'll be asked to authorize. And so once you authorize, you can proceed forward. Okay. So today we're going to talk about course content. Last session we talked about accessing your files or accessing your content, how to bring it into your course within Google. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about once those pieces are in your course, what do you do with them? How do you organize? How do you showcase them in a way that students can see? And so without getting too much into course design specifically, we're just going to give you some considerations or some reasons and some practices that we've seen that where people leverage Google documents, Google content in their courses. So one example might be the syllabus. A syllabus could be leveraged across multiple courses, and if you're not doing any cross-listing of your course and you need to use the same syllabus across different courses, it might be helpful to leverage Google, this Google as document so that you can update anything within that document and it'll show up across all of your courses. And we can see this in all sorts of different examples, but the syllabus, it could be one of the big examples for that. So you can definitely embed a Google document in your syllabus page. Another opportunity where Google Documents could be really effective in your course is if you want to have students collaborate on a live in class notes and taking notes or in your class. So of course, in this example, we've embedded a Google document into a page, and students are posting their notes into that document on that page. This is just another alternative. I mean, you could potentially give editing access to students on a specific page, but that doesn't, that's not a real-time update. Another example could be students to comment on it. So this is just an example. I think one of the things that we referenced this as sort of in an on-site environment or in your classroom face-to-face, sometimes you do poster boards where students go around the room and, you know, are working on a project and creating something on a poster board or bulleting some things on a list, and everyone in the class can see and comment. So this is sort of a version of that. Maybe this could be applied to something like a science fair where everybody kind of puts their posters or their work in a place where viewers can come around and make comments and things like that. Or it could be just kind of an ongoing project feedback environment where you're leveraging the discussion tool and Google Docs in a sort of a much more dynamic way. Another example in terms of organizing your course or showcasing different documents and files and things like that with your students would be those of you who really enjoy doing in-page navigation in terms of organizing your content. So you create a table of contents, you're linking to different files or different places in your course. And so of course you could do that by leveraging Google and linking to different Google documents and creating a table of contents as well. So as we transition, what I will go ahead and do a quick demo on is show you how you can do all of these things, basically leveraging the rich content editor. So whether you're just talking about embedding or linking to files in pages, in the syllabus area, in the discussion prompts, or in assignments even, you're leveraging the rich content editor to organize and sort of curate your course content. And of course, another place that you can do a similar thing is in modules, where you can clump certain resources together and organize your content. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate how you would do this if you did not have the LTI. It's still, every example I showed you and more, of course, these examples weren't inclusive of everything, can be done if you didn't have the LTI, and that's fine. So for example, in the rich content editor, this is an example of a page. You could potentially create a link to a Google document that you have made public. So it will display the document as an inline link, or you can display the document as an embed. So here's an example of a link. But if you were going to embed a file and you didn't have Google LTI, the way you would do that is you would then go to Google, publish one of your files to the web, grab the embed code from there, and then come back into Canvas. And as you're creating your page, you would have to then, in HTML format, embed that into your page. And that would be one way to display your file within a page. So all the examples that I've given you, you can still do that without having the Google LTI. You can also add, the same thing, links to different Google content in your Google Drive through modules. And in modules, you would have to click on external link when you're adding a piece of content to a module, then add the URL of that Google document or Google spreadsheet or whatever you want to embed link to, and then you would add that to the module. So here's an example of a screenshot of a Google document that's been added as an external URL into a module. Right there. Okay, so as we move forward to the next slide, we're going to transition to Nick. Nick is going to basically kind of show you everything I just showed you and how it can be done with the Google LTI and just how much more smoother it is and less steps, less clicks. Nick?
Thanks, B. Roy, and thank you for having me again, and welcome everybody to this session. All right, so I'm going to jump into my course. Now, in order to save a little bit of time, I've set up the framework a little bit where I can go through and create some of these different pieces. So I'm going to jump in first to a piece from to build my table of contents. Now, the theme of today for me is Sherlock Holmes, the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, to be specific. And I pulled this content that I'm talking about today. I pulled a lot of the actual content from the Project Gutenberg online. So I'm going to go to edit on this content page that I've created. Otherwise, you'd just be going to plus within the module in order to start this content page. But here I am in my rich content editor. And just as B-Rai has mentioned, we're going to be able to go in using our Google LTI or Google app and be able to pull in, say, multiple documents if we were to create something that's going to be akin to a table of contents. So my idea behind this is I want to have the students to have access to the stories that we are going to be reading in the course on one page. And as I go in, there we go. I have to remember how I've organized everything, because this is really pulling from my Google Drive, and I use it in my work life quite a bit. It kind of tells me that hint that I've said more than once. Use good naming conventions. Use different pieces that are going to help you be organized in how you build your content. Now, I have multiple pieces to grab here for this. I'm going to select Command. I'm using a Mac, and I'm going to select more than one piece at a time so that I can bring in these different stories to the class. You'll note that I've noticed that I've ordered these 01, 02, and so on. All right, now, since I've selected 6, let's just go with 6 for now. I'm going to select link rather than placing all these stories in the class. I'm going to select the link so that students can then engage these links. That being, again, that this is going to be that central repository where I can then go, or students can then go and see the stories that they're going to be reading for this class. Pieces that will be further defined in the modules as I go through it. So that right there was a pretty quick way of including all this content in order to provide these links. And let me save and publish this option. Now, there it is. I actually like the look of that. And if we were going with the modules route, we're going to be using Google as an external tool to bring in all these different pieces of content. So maybe we go from page to page to page, or so forth within a module in order to have students go in and also recreate that table of contents fill. Maybe what I do is I create a module itself called table of contents or course reading or classroom reading. That's something that is always going to be there and might be even a little bit redundant as I go down to these different components and place them in their specific modules. But I see nothing wrong with leveraging modules in that fashion. So I'm going to go to my plus within the module, and I am going to select external tool rather than external URL, which would be the old way. And I'm going to select Google Drive. And from here, I can go in, wait for this communication to occur. I can go in and I can go through the process of selecting the pieces that I do want to be part of this class. Again, treating this as a table of contents. So let's start with this first story. Submit. I'm adding the item. And then I am going in to go to the next store piece, Google Drive. We're thinking about the consideration between the two. If we're setting it all in one content page or all the works in one content page, students have to remember to go back to that content page in order to access these different pieces. If the students are, if you're using this module piece that I'm going through right now, it's going to take you as an instructor just a little bit more time to work through the process, but it's going to have a payoff in terms of what your students are seeing, and that they're going to be able to see these specific components as they have been brought in. We can call it good with 2 for now, and once I publish these items, they will be visible to my students. Now, B-Rai also mentioned that it'd actually be kind of cool to set up a note page. So since one of our readings is a scandal in Bohemia, let me just reorganize that so we have a bit of an order here. So I can reorganize that just for this piece. Again, it might be separate if I were to treat this as a table of contents, but let's organize it here. We've moved on from the table of contents. Now we're talking about this note page. I've set up a note page. And as I go into this note page, as an instructor, maybe I include some pieces that I want students to consider as they're writing notes in the shared note page. And as I go through, I can also give my direction. Here I am, Mr. Demas. And then I can have my students going through and hopefully providing some notes and rating the story overall. Abraham Lincoln gave this A Scandal of Bohemia an 8. And then I get to see his content. One thing that I actually thought would be kind of cool if we were working through this is to actually have the students select a different color, maybe have a personalized color so that as they come in, we can better identify what they're doing by the color. There are plenty of ways that you can work with some of the colors in Canvas 2 and within Google to make it a little bit more interesting, pulling in pieces like HTML code and so on. All right, so for our last example. So before I mentioned kind of that science fair example, my background is actually, I used to run a kids history program called the Utah History Fair. It was part of National History Day, a nationwide and even international program where students put together well thought out and thesis driven projects. I actually think this would be a cool way for a student-centric project, whether it's a history project, a science fair project, or any other project, whether we're talking about this in K-12 or higher ed, to build a discussion around the student's work. So I'm going to go into this discussion that I've created just to show that I've created it. My directions would be much more developed than this, but I'd want to tell the students to actually bring in a Google Doc to the forum. I'm going to do some screen flipping right now. And I'm going to go over to the student view. Here I am as Abraham Lincoln in this course. And I'm going to jump into this discussion. Now, you wonder where those other pieces are. I didn't refresh. All right. So as a student, I can go into the rich content editor for this discussion. And I can select the piece that I do want to showcase. So I'm going to jump in and use Google App as a student. Where I can then go through setting up or having the students reply as part of this discussion. The student is doing Sherlock Holmes actors, and then he's going to embed this content. And that's going to be part of the discussion that students then can interact with, share ideas with, and be able to just provide general feedback. This is a way that we can incorporate some feedback. We could easily do something like this that would show up a little bit differently by maybe building a content page around it. That's going to, the determination whether you want to do this as a content page or if you want to do this within a discussion is really going to be up to you. I'd say if you're going to be dealing with multiple students, and I'm talking about those huge class sizes, you might consider changing it up a little bit and going into a discussion rather than building content page. This will save you some work in the process, but it also provides you an area where you can have student engagement in some of the feedback. I'm going to go to the Zoom, and I'm going to select fit here. You're noticing that right now the piece is, it's a little bit messy in terms of size, just because we're fitting it into a different area. Now, as I sit fit, it's going to be much better suited for what we want to do with this, this discussion piece. Again, it could be a content page, but we've moved to discussions for it. I've set this up as a graded discussion, so therefore it means it's something that I could actually pull into the speed grader and take a look at. All right, so that's what I wanted to cover today. Again, talking about those page links through building our table of contents, whether we want to do that in a content page or within a module, building a note page for students, and also demonstrating how to set up a discussion or have students enter or embed Google Documents in a discussion. Okay. Now finally, let's talk a little bit about some of the Google LTI tips. So if you happen to install an instance in your classroom and then the institution also installs it at the institutional level, consider deleting it at the course level so that you're not getting two of everything. Now, in general, I'm an advocate of embedding over using inline previews. However, we looked at an exception today when we were building something like a table of contents for the course, or this centralized area for the content reading, rather than stacking those on top of each other. And you saw that where having decent names actually helped me out in being able to find my own content. Well, consider making sure that you have consistent names between your folders and how you are working through your own class. That's going to help you out in being able to find your content as you have more and more content to organize. And right now, it's not really the best idea to be able to check out what you're doing in Student View, as we've encountered that Student View, you're not really going to be able to operate through the LTI. I've instead gone through and added a fake student to my course so that I can log in as the fake student to go through that experience. All right, well, I'm turning it back over to B-Rai. And thank you for working through that piece.
Thanks, Nick. Just addressing some of the questions that are in the chat. Just wanted to let everybody know that we will continue the series. I know these are sort of little chunks of demos. Next on the series is the assignments piece. So we'll really dive deep into assignments, how to leverage Google with Canvas and assignments, both with and without the LTI, and kind of what that looks like from an assignment life cycle perspective, from creating the assignment all the way to grading it in the speed grader. And then we have two more after that. We'll talk about cloud assignments later in the Google LTI series worksheet wonders, and then we'll do another one on collaboration tools and how Google plays a role in that. Go ahead. We wanted to put this out there in case you're interested. If you are a K-12 school, we are putting together a panel discussion where, of course, given the fact that this is still an LTI that's in beta and our product teams are still receiving your feedback and looking at kind of how people are using this tool, we'd like to get a group together to share some of their feedback, best practices, and sort of continue the discussion amongst a group that has really played with it over the last couple of months, played with this tool. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me. And then also, if you haven't discovered, if you want to continue the conversation here as you're troubleshooting, as you're having live, and as you're practicing with and exploring the LTI, we do have a feature where we have a chat rooms for our community. And so if you go to live.canvaslms.com, you'll go, of course, to the Canvas Live page. And from there, you can click into the chats and you can register to get an account in our live chat rooms. And so once you're enrolled in the chat rooms, we have lots of different forums, but I wanted to bring everybody's attention to the Google chat forums that we've created. Again, this is a place for you and some community members, and we'll be in there as well, just kind of helping out to sort of troubleshoot. Has anyone had issues with this? I'm trying to do this. Have you tried it? Can you help me out? These types of sort of real-time conversations. So to continue these discussions, and this is a place where we can sort of curate the feedback and see what is happening with examples from you guys. So you're not limited to this chat here in YouTube. So there's that. We hope to see you there. I'll be in there and we'll continue this conversation there as well. Like I said, feel free to keep your eye on the Google, the Canvas Live space. We'll have more on Google coming up, of course. We have a Canvas Live user group in terms of if you're interested in collaborating or connecting with other people who want to do Canvas Live events, not just Google related, of course. And of course, we have our Canvas Live chat room. So for any topic that you want to discuss in real time with other community members that are already in there. And that's it from us. Let's go to some of the questions that we're seeing here. Feel free to jump in too, Nick. I think one of the questions that came in was about having to re-authenticate every single time. Are you seeing, do you have a way to maybe speak to that, Nick?
So I haven't had to authenticate every time, but I've had to authenticate with consistency. I'm not sure what that's going to look like down the road, what that has to do in terms of with the setup, with the way this is set up. It seems like as I go into the account button on my personal account button, that there is like kind of a refresh on the prod for Google LTI. So I don't know if it's the case right now because it is still in development or because it's a beta piece, or if that's how it's going to be long term. That would be an interesting one to bring up with maybe the product team if we can pass along some feedback. But yeah, I've had to do it quite a bit to. It's actually come in handy a couple times, especially when I log in as one of my students, because I operated out about 4 different Google accounts, and sometimes I do the right one, or I'm involved in the wrong one, and so I have to go through, delete the prod, and then renew it. So I guess it's gone both ways on that one.
Okay. What about, John asks a question about the assignment and the submit button. If the student has been able to authorize via another device previously, it shows the assignment without a submit button in an uneditable form. Do you know anything about that? Have you had any experiences with that?
First, I haven't tried to submit from different areas, but John, could you follow up quickly? Did this happen yesterday or within the last few days? Because I had some inconsistent experience with the submit as I was going through it, and I kind of chuckled a little bit and shrugged it off as being a beta piece. I also had a little bit of, I saw a question earlier today about SpeedGrader or how this is looking in SpeedGrader. And I also had a couple limitations yesterday, a little bit inconsistent with that.
Okay.
So I'd say I think what we're experiencing is some of what happens when we're dealing with a beta component, and that's that things are being developed, and sometimes you run across a piece that is under development. Maybe we have a group of engineers that are working on it right that instance, and that happens to be the moment that you try to update something.
Okay, so John asks the question, I guess we seem to have a lot of authorization questions. John Morris, my institution's Canvas instance will allow me to authorize with its Google credentials, but not with my personal credentials. Is this a factor of my institution?
So my experience with it so far is that you're going to be able to log in one instance at a time. So you're not going to be able to have like duplicate pieces. Maybe I'm doing something wrong in the process. I'm about as experienced in this as everybody else is, maybe a little bit more so, as I spent some time trying to work through and break things and accidentally break things. So what I'm thinking on that one, John, is that you're going to have to go through your account and erase the institutions, that prod from the institution that shows up in, is prod even the right word, but that piece in the account where you can eliminate what's that handshake between Google LTI and your current Google account, and maybe make sure that you're in a clean window logged in under your personal piece in order to do so. And I'd see that Neil read the comment, likely have to delete yes. That's been my experience with it too. That's been my experience with logging in under the wrong Google account. You came in real quick, yeah.
Yeah, I think you said you might have had experience with the Crocodoc
Right.
integration.
That was me yesterday. It's a little bit inconsistent in the way that it was processing document yesterday. That's what I ran into yesterday. You know, I don't know why that's happening. My guess would be that it's something that's currently under development. And that's why we're seeing some transitional issues there. I'd have to go back and check some old pieces, but it looks like some of these are being added as PDFs versus being Google Docs right now. So I'm wondering if that's something that we are seeing a transition in to better leverage Crocodoc, but I can't speak to that in this area.
So Terry had a good suggestion about telling your users to make sure that they are logged into Google before they try anything with the LTI, which is a good sort of best practice to have. And so
Yes.
I think John's question about where to break that connection, is that in the user settings? You want to?
Correct. It would be under the account tab. So your avatar, basically, John, you'd go into your avatar, select settings. Then you'd scroll down just a little bit and you'd see within Canvas. Go into your settings within Canvas, account settings under your avatar, and if you scroll down just a little bit under the settings, you'll see, I can't remember the wording on the area, you'll see where it said, where you can actually delete the link between Google LTI and your instance. Why don't I just jump in and do it real quick. Or excuse me, account settings. We actually had to figure this out when, there we go, approved integrations. And then we can go in and delete that approved integration and then renew the setup. I don't remember the steps after that, John, so I apologize for not remembering the ensuing steps. I haven't done that for a couple of weeks.
Okay, so in an effort to keep within the time frame and make sure that we're not taking advantage of everybody's time here, we'll have a copy of the recording momentarily on the event page. And we look forward to keeping that conversation active either on the event page or in the chat rooms so that we can continue troubleshooting and sharing some ideas and practices on how to leverage Google LTI versus Google in general. So again, you can always contact Nick or I through the community, and we'll be happy to continue helping you with your integration and some questions. And if we don't have the answers for you, we'll go ahead and find the answers. And if there's something that we are seeing a trend in the conversation on, a specific question that keeps coming up, we'll also be sure to pass that along internally as well. As again, as Nick mentioned, this is a beta LTI, so the goal is to continue to improve it. So your feedback is very, very important. Perfect. Have a great rest of your day and have a wonderful weekend. Thanks, Nick, for helping out. And we'll see you in the next Canvas Live session. Thank you.